Here we go. We're coming on the air with pressure on the White House right now to bring Americans home with a new executive order designed to target governments and criminals who keep American detainees captive. But can it help folks stuck in Russia like Brittany Griner or Paul Whelan? Ahead, why the families of those Americans say it's not enough. Plus, the numbers from Netflix really don't tell a very good story. Massive subscriber losses that could spell trouble for the streamer. But these numbers tell us about Netflix's future. And the MLB All-Star Game kicking off tonight in Los Angeles, just as the U.S. Senate is thinking about changing a law that gives special status to the league. Ahead, the answers they want from the league commissioner. And with shark bites on the rise, we turn to our resident shark tooth, Kerry Sanders, and what he has learned from years of swimming with these creatures. And that's in the backstory and my story about a near shark flyby, shall we say. In the original, the country sweltering through major heat waves by this latest stretch of 100-degree temps is putting a strain on the Texas power grid. Hey there, I'm Tom Costello in for Hallie, and is it just me, or is it just a little hot out there? Really hot. If the entire world feels like it's on fire, because a lot of it kind of is right now. Wildfires only adding to this intense and deadly heat that we're seeing from coast to coast here and across Europe as well. No country feeling the burn quite like the UK. Record temps of, get this, 104 degrees, 104. The Brits are hoping and hopping in fountains just to cool off. London's Metropolitan Police say it's now recovered the body of a 14-year-old boy who drowned in the River Thames, showing the many ways this is, in fact, life-threatening. And the heat is sparking fires like this in a town just outside of London. Look at that. The flames eating up an entire row of homes. The city's fire brigade declaring a major incident, simply overwhelmed, dispatching trucks now to at least 10 fires across London. Those fires are heading across all of Europe with firefighting planes dispatched over southwestern France. It's torching campsites in popular vacation areas. You see here the damage, charred bikes and flip-flops. And in Spain and Portugal, more than 1,000 people have now died from the heat. Fires are raging there as well. And we have fires here on this side of the Atlantic. This is Texas. This is Texas right now, I should say, about 65 miles outside of Fort Worth. It's not just fires, the sheer heat alone. Our NBC News climate unit estimating 194 million Americans now face temperatures of 90 degrees or higher today. 40 million or so, 40 million suffering through 100 plus temps today. And you can see this map right here showing that these heat alerts are from coast to coast. Central California, almost all of Texas, and New York as well. Megan Fitzgerald is going to update us on the situation abroad in just a minute. But we're starting right now with Emily Ikeda. She's in Long Branch, New Jersey. Okay, Emily, you're in the hot zone. How serious is it where you are right now?
Hey there, Tom. Well, I'll say this. You know, the East Coast has actually been relatively fortunate in the past couple of days, briefly dodging some of those scorching temperatures we've seen in other parts of the country, but not anymore. You can feel that heat wave setting in. It's the type of hot where it's really quite unbearable to walk on the sand here in your bare feet without your sandals. Right now, 91 degrees here in Long Branch, and the temperatures in this area will continue to rise as we see the days pass throughout the week. Tomorrow, several heat alerts set to go into effect in Philadelphia, New York, up in Boston, as well as residents in those areas brace for what could feel like triple-digit temperatures. We talked to beachgoers around here about how they're beating the heat. Take a listen.
Right in the sun, it feels like about 110, but in the shade, beautiful because there's the ocean breeze.
I'm just taking a little ride. It's nice and breezy by the water. Probably definitely go in the water.
It's pretty hot, right? But nothing we can't handle.
Some 40 million Americans in other parts of the country are already seeing triple digits today. Really, Texas being especially hammered. Several cities in that state have seen more triple-digit temperature days so far this year than they typically record all summer long. So a season certainly shaping out to be quite unrelenting. Some more records expected to be eclipsed throughout the day. In Arkansas, for instance, anticipated high of 170 degrees. In Oklahoma, that number is closer to 110 degrees, Tom.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, it's not just the heat, though. We've also got storm activity, right? Here's some video we saw in New York of flooding that's happened there in the subway last night. Look at that. And then of a car falling into a sinkhole. Very dramatic video. The storms, the humidity only compounding the issue, I'm guessing, Emily.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned earlier it's 91 degrees here in Long Branch, New Jersey, but it feels like 96 degrees, and that feels like temperature is largely driven up by the humidity. When you mix humidity with those high temperatures, that puts us at greater risk for those cloudbursts, those thunderstorms like what we saw pan out yesterday in the New York City area, which parts saw several inches of rain in just a matter of hours. Tom?
Sunscreen, Emily. Sunscreen. Thank you very much. Emily Ikeda, who's on the beach there in New Jersey for us. Let's go now to Megan Fitzgerald. She's in London. All right, Megan, what's the latest you're hearing on efforts there to fight the fires in the UK and across Europe? The video of that row of houses in London on fire, that's really dramatic.
I know, it's intense, Tom. And of course, that comes when the United Kingdom is seeing the hottest temperatures on record of 104 degrees, as you mentioned. But look, these firefighters are doing everything they can to try and battle these blazes as they pop up. This was just one of several that we're seeing across London. And then when you take a look at what's happening in Spain and Portugal into France, these firefighters are working around the clock to try and contain these blazes that just continue to rage and spread. We know in France right now more than 30,000 acres are burning in the Bordeaux region there. But look, we were told that morale is high, but fatigue is setting in. These guys are tired, but they're doing everything they can to try and get the job done, Tom.
Oh, goodness gracious. You know, I mentioned the boy who died in the Thames River as people there were just desperate to get cool. And, you know, I used to live in London. I used to live in Brussels. One thing we keep hearing, folks there simply don't have air conditioning. And that must really be a problem right now. Adding to the difficulty, people simply can't cool off, right?
Absolutely. And that's the biggest concern here. That's why we saw a state of emergency being declared. And like you mentioned, people jumping into rivers and lakes and ponds, buying fans, doing everything they can to try and stay cool because they don't have air conditioning. The majority of people in this country just never needed to have air conditioning. And so that's why the government here thought that this was going to be a serious situation. Now, of course, 104 degrees in the United States is hot, always dangerous, but a little bit different here because is not equipped to withstand that type of temperature. And so you see things like the train tracks, right, and tarmacs buckling, disrupting service because the infrastructure just can't take that heat. So moving forward, we know that builders and developers are coming up with new plans moving forward as they build these new buildings, keeping in mind that this is likely just the start of these extreme temperatures that are coming, Tom.
Yeah, my mother-in-law, who's a senior citizen in Brussels, is just sweltering, as you would expect. Let's pull up this map right now showing the temperatures right now in the UK. Really dramatic. And we've already seen the highs. But a big part of this is that the temperatures are going to stay dangerously hot into the night as well, right?
Well, you know what, Tom? So the good news here is that, as we know, these forecasts always change. That was the case yesterday. That was supposed to be the case tonight. But we are understanding that the forecast is shifting, that there is some reprieve that's coming. In fact, it's starting to rain here now in East London. We know that temperatures are going to be falling now and into tomorrow. So reprieve is on the way. But we do know that these heat waves are here to stay in Europe. The next batch of heat wave is heading now to Germany and Belgium, where they are bracing for record-setting temperatures of 104 degrees, Tom, in the coming days.
Megan, thanks. Get a milkshake on us, okay? Charge the company. Megan Fitzgerald, who's in London. We appreciate it. Later in the show, our original is going to look at how Texas, which had a lot of trouble with its power grid, you may recall, after the winter storms, how it's trying to keep the power on now during the heat wave. Other news now, an explosion at the Hoover Dam today turned out to be a transformer fire. Look at all that smoke coming from the area. People posted videos like this to social media of what looked like a fire in a building near the base of the dam. Dam authorities say the fire's been extinguished now and no one was injured. There's also no risk to the power grid. It's not clear why the fire started. Families of Americans wrongfully detained abroad say the president's new executive order aimed at bringing detainees home doesn't go far enough. Bring Our Families Home campaign, which represents 20 families, calls the new order, quote, a half measure. Earlier today, the president declared a national emergency over the wrongful detention of Americans. Some of the actions include imposing sanctions on criminals, terrorists, or government officials who hold Americans captive. The administration hopes this could help detainees like WNBA star Brittany Griner, who has been held in Russia since February. She's pleaded guilty to drug smuggling charges and hopes it could speed up her release. And then there's the American businessman Paul Whelan, who has been jailed in Russia since 2018, accused of spying, which the U.S. has denied. His brother David calls the new order huge. The executive order coming after growing criticism that the Biden administration has not done enough to help the families. Let's bring in now Josh Letterman from the White House. So, Josh, what does this new executive order actually do, and does it really have any teeth?
Well, it does in the sense that it elevates this hostage issue as a national security priority, Tom, but it doesn't have a ton of new policy in it. What this executive order that President Biden signed behind closed doors, he didn't sign in a big public ceremony, but this order would allow the U.S. government to impose sanctions, financial penalties, as well as visa bans on people who are involved in hostage taking. But a lot of the critics are saying, look, we've got a ton of sanctions on Russia already and growing. And still, Brittany Griner sits in Russian jail. So there's some question about how effective that will be. But this order also will create better information sharing, the government says, with hostage families about the condition of their loved one and what the government is doing to try to get them back. And will also provide more information to the public about exactly which countries American citizens face a higher risk of being taken hostage.
You know, we're looking at pictures there of Brittany Griner, and she is so tall. She must be so uncomfortable in those cramped cages that they have her in. Bring Our Families Home group has been critical of the Biden administration, saying that the White House is taking executive action to direct itself to follow existing law. Talk about what the families actually want to see happen, though.
Yeah, they're calling this a half measure. They're saying, look, an executive order is nice, but it doesn't bring someone home. But you're right. There's not a ton of specifics about what could President Biden actually do that he's not. What they are calling for specifically is they want a meeting with President Biden. They want FaceTime with him to discuss this issue. Now, President Biden has taken time to speak by phone with Brittany Griner's wife, as well as with a sibling of Paul Whelan. He has not met with them face to face, but the government is limited. And John Kirby, the national security spokesman, said today, every situation is different. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation to try to get someone out of custody overseas, and that's why this is such a continuing challenge for the U.S. government.
Any idea how much effect the family pressure, the public pressure had in creating this executive order?
I think it did have quite a bit of effect because it really put public pressure on the White House to do something that was public and visible, even, again, if it wasn't a game changer. And we've seen a pattern of this, including in the gun control debate, where some of the families of gun violence victims were very vocal in wanting the president to do more, in wanting meetings with the president, and they were able to push the White House towards more aggressive action. So certainly that had a role, but the government says they're doing everything they can anyway and would be regardless of any public pressure, Tom.
Josh, thank you. Josh Lederman at the White House. Other news now. Netflix just now has announced this afternoon that it has lost subscribers for the second quarter in a row. That's something that has never happened before. The silver lining, though, it lost 970,000 subscribers around the world, but that is fewer than the 2 million it was expecting to lose. In a letter to investors today, Netflix said it expects to add 1 million subscribers this quarter. Its stock has gone up in after-hours trading. So why does Netflix keep losing customers? Well, we know inflation and concern about a possible recession could be contributing factors. Netflix's standard U.S. plan is now $15.49 a month. That's pricier than the other major streaming services. And its competition is stepping up its game. HBO Max, they want to add Discovery Plus content to the platform by the end of the year. Disney Plus already has a bundle offer that includes Hulu and ESPN Plus. Jake Ward joins me now. He is the expert on all things tech. Hey, buddy, at the start of 2022, a lot of folks were predicting Netflix would add more than 20 million new subscribers this year. We saw how well Netflix actually did during the pandemic. And now, how does that all play into what's happening here? We got the post-pandemic, we got the recession, at least concerns about it, we got inflation. Talk about how all of that impacts the numbers today.
Well, it certainly was a day that everybody was watching. Netflix has always been the bellwether of the streaming era we are now in. And it, of course, remains the largest streaming service. It is enormous with, far and away the leader of that, almost 221 million subscribers around the world and just shy of $8 billion in revenue. And so these numbers we're seeing today are a bit of a disappointment, but not as much of a disappointment as we were expecting. Analysts had really expected close to probably 2 million subscribers lost. In this case, we're looking at just shy of 1 million subscribers. And it's all these factors you were talking about, Tom. It is, of course, inflation. It is, of course, the price of the subscription service. It's also other things like the rising value of the dollar as compared to the falling value of something like the euro. About 60% of Netflix's revenue comes from abroad. And so as those currencies fall in value compared to the dollar, that's just less money flowing into Netflix. So you're seeing all of these different factors working here. But the big one, I think, to consider, Tom, is just Netflix is not alone anymore. Once upon a time, it was the out-and-out pioneer of this world. Now there are so many streaming alternatives. It had to happen at some point that their growth was going to slow, Tom.
Yeah, and Netflix is working on changes to its platform, right? It wants to add a plan with ads, and it's trying to crack down on password sharing. That's not happening for a while, though. Talk to us about what we've learned about that and the whole ad model. Will people pay for a Netflix subscription if it has an ad model, or are these two separate channels?
Well, I think these two things you're describing, right, a borrowed password and this idea of a new, cheaper tier of service are probably connected. You're talking here about Netflix trying to essentially convert people who've gotten used to getting it for free because they have their aunt's password or their grandma's password, trying to convert those people into paying customers. They need to perhaps offer them a cheaper way to get onto the platform. And this ad-supported service may be a way to do that. A $15 monthly fee is the kind of thing people are going to tighten their belts around in a time of recession and inflation. So maybe a cheaper ad-supported model like the one they announced today could be their path to converting those people, Tom.
Okay, real quick, they've had a big hit with season 4 of Stranger Things, and now we've got the blockbuster Gray Man out this week. It's gambling big with that one, right?
Absolutely. It is extraordinary to see, gone are the days when you had movie studios that were either highbrow or lowbrow or middlebrow. You've got all of that coming out of Netflix at this point, and the fact that they are throwing $200 million at this movie. They're going to deploy it across 450 theaters. It is just incredible to see how much money they spend on this stuff. Even in a belt-tightening moment like the one we're in, Netflix is still the big behemoth when it comes to throwing money at productions, Tom.
That looks like a cool movie, though. I want to see that one. All right, Jake. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Other news now, still in Silicon Valley and the area, Elon Musk and Twitter are going to court in a 5-day trial in October. That decision from a judge in Delaware today, it's a win for Twitter, which had asked the judge to expedite the trial in a lawsuit it filed against Musk last week. Now, Musk was trying to delay the start time of that trial until next year. His lawyer says that he needs more time to investigate whether Twitter really has misrepresented the amount of spam and bot accounts on the platform. Twitter says that was just a tactic to hurt the company in the court of public opinion. Twitter is still hoping it can force Musk to make good on his promise to buy the site for $44 billion. And another legal battle unfolding in Washington. The first day of longtime Trump advisor Steve Bannon's trial. It's officially over. Court just wrapped up. Bannon is charged with defying a subpoena from the January 6th committee. They were seeking his records and testimony. And here he is leaving today, out of court. Earlier today, after the final jury selection wrapped up, the two sides delivered opening arguments with Bannon's side, Bannon's defense, really declaring that their client is innocent. Federal prosecutors, they say, no, we don't agree, telling jurors that Bannon, quote, decided he was above the law, unquote, when he blew off the January 6th committee's request. The trial will pick back up tomorrow morning. Bannon is facing 2 charges now of criminal contempt. If convicted, each charge carries a minimum of 30 days in jail. We now go to Uvalde, Texas, where dozens of angry parents, teachers, and residents are demanding answers. Still, Resignations they want as well, and accountability from the school board there. You can see it right here. Parents, siblings of victims and survivors taking the podium one after the other at the school board meeting last night. The Texas community is still coming to terms with the aftermath of the mass shooting at Robb Elementary nearly 2 months ago. And all those emotions were on full display as hundreds of community members crammed inside an auditorium at the Uvalde High School. Let's just take a listen.
What are you guys going to do to make sure I don't have to watch my friends die? What are you going to do to make sure I don't have to wait 77 minutes bleeding out on my classroom floor just like my little sister did?
Over 400 law enforcement officers there. Not one was man enough to go in there. 77 minutes. 77 minutes.
Well, I'll tell you this, if he's not fired by noon tomorrow, then I want your resignation and every single one of you board members, because y'all do not give a damn about our children or us. Stand with us or against us, because we ain't going nowhere.
NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas joins me now from Uvalde. Guad, is anybody listening to these families? Will they get the change, the action that they're demanding?
Well, Tom, first off, you heard the reaction when they mentioned that they wanted the people that were present at this meeting. They wanted the school district police chief, Pete Arredondo, to be fired from his job. Now, yesterday's meeting was important because this was the first time the school district met with the parents and the members of the community, gave them a microphone and unlimited time to ask questions. And they were on stage. We had the members of the school board listening to angry parents, members of the community, and students. The school district superintendent getting some tough questions. You know, the things that were brought up by a lot of the people that were at this meeting that were yelling were in response to the report that was released over the weekend. Now, these things have to do, some of them, with the report finding that there was issues with the school, with the doors not locking properly, the perimeter fencing, and then, of course, the issues with the police response, where there wasn't any clear leadership with the officers that responded. So there's a lot of information that has surfaced, and the parents are reacting to that information. Now, the one thing they kept asking for, again, is they're asking for an entire new police department. This is the school district police department, and they're asking for the superintendent to fire Police Chief Pete Arredondo. Now, the superintendent has said that they have to take a lot of information into consideration. Now, the findings of this report will be taken into consideration, along with more information from other investigations that are taking place, and only then the school board will make a decision when it comes to Pete Arredondo. Meanwhile, the school board did say that they plan to improve school security with adding new locks, new doors, a new perimeter fence, and also more police officers. And finally, they said more training for the staff for the school district. Tom?
Nearly 400 officers responded, and that one lone gunman killed all those kids and those teachers. Just astonishing. Guad Venegas, thank you very much. Coming up, the mother of two young black girls says her children were intentionally ignored at a Sesame Place kids park, and it's apparently not the only time something like this had actually happened. What the park is saying now. Plus, health experts in South Africa say they've now found a potential cause of death for the nearly 24 teens who died at a bar there last month. That's one of our 5 things to watch tonight. Stay with us. Sesame Place, Philadelphia could face a lawsuit from a family who says their 2 young black children, girls, were ignored by a performer dressed as the character Rosita. The video has gone viral. It appears that the performer had interacted with other children before reaching the girls, and then the video seems to show the character shaking her head no in the direction of the 2 young black girls. In the first statement Sesame Place Philadelphia put out, it called this incident a misunderstanding, saying it's hard for the characters to see all the children. But after the backlash continued, with several celebrities speaking out, along with civil rights attorney Ben Crump, the venue apologized. It now says it knows that what happened yesterday is not okay. Since Sunday, more videos have emerged of other black children allegedly receiving different treatment than white children nearby. The park has not responded to those videos. Rahima Ellis joins us now. Rahima, the video, the family who claims they were shunned at a Sesame theme park, they've gotten a lawyer, and they say that they're upset about the lack of accountability on behalf of the park, right?
That's absolutely right, Tom. In fact, the mother went on Instagram and responding to the apology from the theme park, and she used the words disrespectful and distasteful in terms of her reaction to the apology. She said that she felt that the apology came in an effort to, in her words, save face. And she in no way accepts the explanation from the theme park that their performer did not recognize the two little black girls because in full costume, they can't see at a lower level. But the mother says right after they ignored her children, that performer went on and acknowledged a little white girl who was standing right next to him. So this apology is falling kind of flat for this family right now.
Can we show that video again? It looks like whoever's inside looks out the mouth. Is that right? That's how he or she sees who's down there or who's out there?
I can't say for sure, and the park doesn't say exactly that the performer is looking through the mouth of the costume, but their explanation was that while in full costume, the performer can't see at a lower level. Again, the mother said that doesn't seem to ring true for her because after her children were ignored, the performer went right next to them and a little white girl was right there, and they acknowledged that little girl.
All right, talk about the action of the theme park. Now, what action have they taken to try to make this right?
Well, we don't know exactly the specific action they've taken at this moment, but what we can tell you what they're promising to do. They're promising to provide additional training to their employees. And here's important, I want to read this for you. They say what they want to do is make certain that there's a better understanding. They're going to apologize and deliver an inclusive, equitable, and full extensive experience for their performers so that there might be a full entertaining opportunity for the guests. The park also says that it's going to conduct a thorough review and wants its employees to understand and engage with families and guests in a respectful way. And they say what happened with this little girl and these two little black girls, they say in their words, it was unacceptable. Tom? Well,
you can imagine, regardless of the intention, if it was your kids, you'd be pretty upset about it. Rahima, thank you. Rahima Ellis, appreciate you reporting. Let's get you over now to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, a CDC panel unanimously recommended Novavax's 2-dose COVID-19 vaccine for people 18 and older. The CDC director could give the okay for the shots to go into arms as soon as this week. The vaccine's different from Pfizer or Moderna. It's based on protein technology, like the kind used for HPV and hepatitis B vaccines. Number 2, officials in South Africa say 21 teens who died at a bar there last month had methanol in their blood. It's a toxic form of alcohol that's usually used for industrial purposes. Authorities are still waiting on lab results to tell them whether there was enough methanol in their systems to kill them. The owner of the bar and some employees were arrested for selling liquor to children. Number 3, President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden greeted Ukraine's First Lady at the White House today. Zelensky, Jill Biden then had a private meeting. Ukraine's First Lady is set to address members of Congress tomorrow. Number 4, today the House is voting on the Respect for Marriage Act, which would codify the right to same-sex marriage nationwide in case the Supreme Court reverses its 2015 decision. And later this week, the House is set to vote on codifying the Right to Contraception Act that would protect access to birth control. It's not clear if either of them would actually pass the Senate. Number 5, Toys R Us is back. Kinda. It's just in time for this year's holiday season. The company says it's going to open shops inside every Macy's store in the U.S. by mid-October, and it filed for bankruptcy back in 2017. Facing really hundreds of millions of dollars in debt, and it closed hundreds of stores across the country. It's closed its last 2 physical stores in the U.S. in January 2021. Toy sales have actually exploded during the pandemic. Tonight, in an NBC News exclusive, we're going inside the United Airlines Pilot Training Center in Denver, where the next generation of pilots is learning to fly passenger planes around the country and around the world. Now, this is critical training as the airline responds to the shortage of airline pilots. I met United flight instructor Scott Kartev, a former Blue Angel pilot who was also a stunt pilot in the latest Tom Cruise Top Gun movie. He said that even though the airline hires dozens of new pilots each week, there is still a huge demand for more. How many pilots do you have now? How many do you need, and what's your goal?
Currently, right now, we have about 13,000 mainline United pilots at United. And we're hiring anywhere from 40 to 70 a week that we are bringing through every week here in the training center through basic pilot indoctrination.
The need is that great?
The need is that great.
You can see my full report inside United's training simulators, their pilot program, on NBC Nightly News tonight, 6:30 Eastern Time. When we come back, senators want answers from Major League Baseball about why it does not have to follow antitrust laws when all other major sports do. What's behind the lawmakers' legal threat after the break. Take me out to the ballpark. This is supposed to be a day of celebration in Major League Baseball, right? The All-Star Game's tonight. Players walking the red carpet in L.A. Yeah, but underneath that glitz is what might be the most serious legal threat to the sport in years. That's because a bipartisan group of senators wants answers from MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred on why the league still needs antitrust exemptions. In non-legalese, it's because a 100-year-old Supreme Court case basically lets MLB do whatever it wants to remain the biggest show in town. And maybe most important, it lets the league fold minor league teams, eliminating jobs and keeping the pay down even under minimum wage. We should note this has no impact on major league salaries because they have a union. And to be clear, only MLB can do this, not the NFL, not hockey, not the NBA. And that's true among almost any other companies as well. MLB can stamp out the competition in ways that Amazon can't, Apple can't, Ford can't, we can't. In a statement to The Athletic, an MLB spokesperson says the league looks forward to handing over detailed information on how the antitrust exemption is a good thing. Sahil Kapoor is on Capitol Hill, and he has lots of competition on Capitol Hill. So, Sahil, the minor league aspect is a big piece here, right? Senator Bernie Sanders has talked about this because MLB broke up the only team in his home state of Vermont, and these senators basically accused the league of lying when they passed the Save America's Pastime Act, right?
That's right, Tom. As you can imagine, Bernie Sanders not very happy about the loss of the Vermont Lake Monsters here. But yes, the letter does have that insinuation of, the league seemingly lying when it justified the need for that antitrust exemption in the first place. They write in this letter, quote, MLB claimed that the bill was necessary to prevent minor league contraction. They go on to say, however, despite the bill's enactment prior to the 2021 baseball season, dozens of minor league teams lost their affiliations with MLB clubs as a result of MLB's reorganization of the minor leagues. In other words, they want answers for why the justification for this antitrust exemption doesn't seem to have panned out in these cases in what appears to be a sternly worded letter.
Okay, so walk us through now the other specific answers the Senate wants from the commissioner by this time next week.
Right. In the big picture sense, they want the league to explain why this antitrust exemption is a good thing, why this league should maintain this unique antitrust exemption, what justifies it, what impact it has had on recent reorganizations by the league, including things like lockouts and work stoppages, the impact on negotiation of minor league contracts. They want a series of answers in a very specific sense from the league before Congress determines how to move forward on this issue.
Okay, buddy, but we've had so many threats from Capitol Hill to baseball's antitrust exemption over the years. Is this one really any different from those? Will they take any action this time?
It's hard to know, Tom. I mean, generally in Congress lately, I've gotten used to always betting on them not overacting, but this is the type of coalition, the names behind this letter that could potentially lead to action. You've got the senior Democrat, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Dick Durbin, the ranking member, Chuck Grassley. You've got Bernie Sanders, one of the most liberal members of the Senate. You have Mike Lee, that Republican of Utah, one of the most conservative members of the Senate, all on this letter. So ideologically, there does appear to be a broad base of appetite. Whether they translate that to action remains to be seen, and if so, what that looks like.
Despite the background noise, Sahil is in fact on Capitol Hill, not the D.C. metro system. Thanks, Sahil. Appreciate your reporting today. Coming up, why officials in Iowa are posting warnings about the water at several state beaches in Iowa. Plus, how some people are trying to hack gas pumps. Yeah, they want to get cheaper fuel. Stay with us. NBC News covers hundreds of stories each day, and not even Bert, our floor director, can read them all. However, he and we are in luck because our bureau teams have done it for all of us. This is what they tell us is going on in their regions today, a segment we call The Local. From our Northeast Bureau, New York police say a man was shot and killed on the set of Law and Order Organized Crime today. A 31-year-old victim was working as parking enforcement for the show when he was apparently ambushed in a car. He was shot in the face and the neck. No arrests have been made. It's not clear whether the set was active at the time. From our Southeast Bureau, University of Florida Gators quarterback Anthony Richardson says he's no longer going to use the nickname AR-15. The sophomore said the nickname combined his initials, AR, and the jersey number 15. Richardson says he's going to change his apparel line's branding too because of the assault rifle's use in mass shootings in the United States. From our Midwest Bureau, state health authorities in Iowa are warning people at some state beaches the water may not be safe. That's because of high levels of E. coli at nearly a dozen state parks. Right now, those beaches have warning signs saying that swimming is not recommended. Another beach in the state is closed because a person in Missouri, died after swimming there, likely from a brain-eating amoeba. Now, we want to bring you today's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. As Texas gets hit with record heat, the state's power grid can't keep up. Check out what happened to this meteorologist while reporting on this extreme heat just last week.
You have this kind of heat over major populations, you get a big draw on that electric demand, and it looks like we may have just switched over to generator power. Our lights just went out.
Wow, right on cue. While the state has had some success with people cutting back voluntarily, the officials there say much more is needed with more extreme weather expected. NBC's Isa Gutierrez has more.
Honestly, I don't remember a summer ever this hot.
Rudy Garza is the interim president and CEO of San Antonio's electric utility, CPS Energy. This summer, he has a lot more on his plate than just staying cool.
What's the thing that you're most worried about with all of this?
Well, my job is to keep the lights on. And if we get into a situation where we're having to roll outages across the community, that's what keeps me up at night.
As Texas sees record-breaking high temperatures across multiple areas, this summer there's renewed concern about the vulnerability of the state's power grid system.
They're working very hard to restore full power, but at this point there is no definitive timetable.
With some getting flashbacks to the deadly cold wave in 2021. That collapsed the electric grid and resulted in at least 246 deaths, most from exposure to the sometimes sub-zero temperatures. Garza has seen the challenges today firsthand.
I think the grid is managing about as well as our community can expect because these hot temperatures just make it real difficult.
Last week alone, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, asked Texans twice to cut back on energy use during peak hours to avoid blackouts. They say their first effort last Monday was a success, with customers cutting back on nearly 500 megawatts, enough to power about 17,000 homes for a day. But some experts say outdated power grids in Texas and across the country are under a real threat as extreme weather becomes more common with climate change.
The biggest challenge to our grid is that it was built for a climate of the past. And now that grid is aging. It's being pounded by floods, high winds, hotter temperatures.
Since 2000, extreme weather has caused 67% more major power outages in the U.S., according to a 2020 analysis by research group Climate Central. President Biden's infrastructure bill is taking steps to address this problem, allocating $65 billion to upgrading the electrical grid.
We can design an electric system that is more resilient and more reliable in the face of climate change. But the longer we wait to do that, the more expensive and the more difficult it will become.
Some solutions that exist today include what's called hardening the grid, which can involve burying overhead transmission lines underground. Another solution, a grid that relies more on renewable energy. Texas now leading that change, building the most new renewable energy projects last year, according to a report by the American Clean Power Association, a renewable energy trade group. But for now,
it really is an hour-to-hour, day-to-day experience right now to ensure that we're doing what we need to do to keep our power flowing. If customers think that their actions don't matter, they matter, especially in this level of extreme heat.
So Issa joins us now. So Issa, what other cities and states beyond Texas, what are they doing about this?
Yeah, so Tom, just recently, California launched a program that requires utilities to do climate change vulnerability assessments so they can try and figure out where they might need new facilities, where they might need facility upgrades. Then you have Consolidated Edison, the energy company Con Edison here in New York City, doing similar evaluations to see how they can make their grid more, resilient in the face of climate change and these extreme temperatures. And then there's also the example of cities like Atlanta, Georgia, building microgrids and resilience hubs. These are designed to help communities keep the lights on when there are broader issues with the electric grid systems. But, Rudy Garza from CPS Energy in San Antonio, what he said to me is that these things really take time. Building new infrastructure takes time, and they don't have that time. You just heard him, hour by hour. They're trying to figure out how to keep the power running while also trying to build these new, more resilient systems. And it's a real challenge, Tom.
Yeah. Issa, good digging, good reporting. Thank you very much. Issa Gutierrez there. Some good news, and I didn't stutter here. Good news on gas prices. They're actually at a 2-month low right now, according to AAA. But prices are still high, and that's leading to more people stealing gas straight from the pump. An NBC News review of police and local news reports finds that at least 22 people have been arrested for either manipulating computers that manage gas pumps or installing homemade devices to get their gas cheaper. And these devices aren't exactly high-tech. Hackers are taking advantage of the fact that the pumps used by gas stations are standardized and usually don't have strong security protections. NBC News found that some hacking tools are even sold on eBay. Kevin Collier reported this out for NBCNews.com. He joins me now. So, Kevin, you say that most gas stations use pumps from just 2 manufacturers. Does that make it easier for these thieves to steal gas then?
It does. From a hacker or thief's perspective, that dramatically reduces the numbers of systems that you would have to learn if you want to exploit them. For one of the two, most of the pumps are accessible with remote control. And, in theory, those remote controls are just owned by the gas station owners and techs. But in practice, you can find them for sale pretty easily. I was able to find a lot online for eBay, on eBay and elsewhere. Now, station owners can change the default PIN that lets them log in to enter like a maintenance mode that dispenses gas for free, but a lot of station owners don't change that PIN. For the other, it's a little more complicated, but it's still low tech. Thieves make these homemade devices that slow down how fast a gas pump counts the gas that comes through, so the thieves will get fuel going through the pump for pennies on the dollar that they spend.
Yeah, and according, I guess, from the National Association of Convenience Stores, about a quarter of gas station owners say they've actually seen thefts increasing since March. So where is the stolen gas going, and who are they selling it to? Do we know?
Yeah, so a lot of this didn't make it into my story, but most of the guys who were caught, and all the 22 suspects arrested since March that I was able to track down through police reports, they were men. Most of the guys who were caught were allegedly not just stealing for themselves, but would be advertising on Facebook Live or Instagram Live. Hey, come to this station after 10 p.m. And I'll give you gas. You can fill up your tank for $20, something like that. So it tends to be a neighborhood thing in most of the cases that we were able to find. Just sell to your friends and family.
All right, you talk about the arrest, but what else is being done to stop this from happening?
Not a lot. There are the Secret Service, for instance, on the regional level is taking some proactive steps to try to create task force that crack down on this. But by and large, this isn't something that there's any federal group that's making this a major thing, because it tends to be moderately low stakes theft, a couple $1,000s at a time. So not a lot.
All right, buddy. Kevin Collier, thank you very much. Good reporting. Still to come, great whites, tiger sharks, bull sharks. Kerry Sanders has seen them all. We're diving into how he tells their stories for our backstory tonight. We'll be right back. Okay, this is what we've all been waiting for, the backstory, our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into our bigger picture. This week, NBC's Today Show is doing a special series on sharks, and we're now learning more about the birthing process for the sand tiger shark species. They were thought to give birth inland in shallow water. That is until these pictures taken by an underwater photographer showed a baby shark in way deeper waters. And we're talking about 100 feet down. Shark experts decided to check it out to find out more, and so did we. Actually, NBC's Kerry Sanders dove about 90 feet down in North Carolina, where they found over 30 sharks circling the shipwreck. Now, he even interviewed a shark expert underwater who witnessed a shark giving birth over a similar shipwreck. So it's possible sand tigers are using these wrecks as a sort of nursery for their babies. Yesterday, Kerry reported on how great white sharks, one of the most aggressive, are now migrating hundreds of miles because of rising ocean temperatures. And while this may seem a bit scary, this is something Kerry has been doing for years. He's told stories on sharks from the Atlantic Ocean, from the waters off Papua New Guinea, from the Great Barrier Reef, and so many more. This is why he does it and not me. Kerry, he joins us now. So, Kerry, start with this latest story you just did. Give us a sense of what it's like to shoot and have a full-on interview underwater.
It is incredibly complicated, Tom, because, you cannot transmit underwater. So it's not like you could take a two-way radio and transmit underwater. You have to be above the water in the air to do that. So we take a cable down off the boat, and the mask we wear is a full face mask, and then you push a button, you take a breath, then you talk. The person on the other end is now transmitting on this cable, and they can then respond pushing a button. And you have to kind of recognize that when you're breathing, it may be hard to actually hear, but we have these little headphones on under there, and we can hear each other speaking. But this is important. When you go on an airplane, of course Tom, you're the aviation guy. You know how you go up sometimes and it feels like, oh, my ears are not popping properly? Same thing happens when you go down below. It's a little bit different because you have the pressure of the water. So you have to hold your nose, squeeze and blow, and try and pop your ears. That is something that you do, and sometimes you can even just swallow and do it with a regular face mask. But with these full face masks, when you're going down there, it's far more complicated to get the pressure on the nose. So for instance, on this dive, we were at around 60 feet doing the interview with the sharks around us. One of my ears was not properly balanced, and it actually becomes rather painful. So at one point after we did that interview for a while, I said, we're done, let's go to the surface.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, you have a photographer or two. We should make the point, right? We're nothing without our photographers. Hey, by the way, marine biologists, I guess they say the sharks don't hunt humans. But can you describe what goes through your mind when you find yourself pretty much face to face with a shark?
Well, it happens, Tom. You're down there and a shark comes. The very first time I saw a shark, it was a hammerhead and I was frightened to death. But just swam by me, paid no attention to me. And I have since learned that, okay, respect it. You're in their territory. Don't reach out. Don't try to pet a shark. Some people do that. I'm not going to. When we were down there with the sand tiger sharks, if you get a little too close, they'll actually thwack their tail and bump you. But that's okay. I'm not going after them. And generally, sharks are not interested in us. I mean, we know from what science tells us that sharks don't hunt humans, and we know that the reason it's on the news is because it is such a rare occurrence when somebody does get bitten by a shark. Let me put this into perspective. Worldwide, number of people killed by a shark, more people are killed by coconuts falling off trees and hitting people in the head than people are killed by sharks.
Okay, Carrie, I texted you about 3 weeks ago. I was in the Gulf of Mexico visiting my folks, standing up to about my knees, a little bit higher in water, Gulf of Mexico, off Longboat Key. I've been doing this for 25 years, and suddenly here comes a shark. It was about a 5-footer. It was maybe 15 feet from me, and I talked to some experts. They think it was a black-nosed or black-tipped shark. And then the next day, another one. Or the same one, I don't know. Same thing, a 5-footer came that close to me. And I thought, my goodness gracious, these sharks are coming so close to shore. That really scared the heck out of me. That was an oh my moment, but I didn't say oh my.
And remember, sharks are hunting. They're hungry, and they're constantly hunting. So if you were out, say, in waist deep or chest deep water, there may have been bait fish there, and they were coming in looking for bait fish. I know how you feel when you see it. I mean, it's just like, what, you lose your breath and everything else. But the end of the story is, not once, but twice, you saw a shark relatively close to you, and here you are with no issues.
Yeah, well, I kept my toes, thankfully. Carrie, thanks, buddy. I'm in awe of your expertise. I have no interest in doing your job, but I'm in awe of you. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right.
Back at you.
Carrie Sanders in Florida. That's a wrap for this hour. Hallie will be back here tomorrow. Same time, same place. Coverage resumes right now.